Number 11. TILIKUM SeaWorld Incident. TILIKUM was an incredibly popular killer whale that certainly lived up to his species' common name. Before being purchased by SeaWorld to perform in several of the park's shows, TILIKUM had already been involved in the death of a trainer. Years later, in 1999, a 27-year-old visitor decided to hide just before the establishment closed for the day. He wanted to swim with the massive sea creature and sneaked into the orca tank after evading security. The next morning, his body was discovered covered in wounds, abrasions, and contusions. An autopsy revealed drowning as the cause of death. Though several cameras monitored the area, SeaWorld representatives told the authorities that the incident wasn't recorded. Among the many injuries discovered, the most prominent ones seemed to be puncture wounds to his legs and a torn scrotum. Number 10. Death at a roller coaster. SeaWorld is arguably best known for its marine animals and water-related shows, but the massive corporation has several different branches. Legally known as SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment, the Orlando-based company has bought or founded several theme and entertainment parks, including Busch Gardens in Tampa, Florida. This African-inspired venue was host to the strange and untimely death of a 13-year-old girl. On June the 10th of 1995, the unnamed child rode the Kumba roller coaster and suffered from a heart attack immediately after getting off. Unbeknown to her mother, the child was suffering from a rare heart condition. Soon after her death, the mother sued SeaWorld, claiming the park hadn't administered CPR fast enough. Though she was awarded $500,000, her history of drug abuse prompted the court to argue for a 30% deduction of that sum, considering her partially responsible. Number 9. Justin Savers INVERSSO. During September of 2011, 21-year-old lifeguard Justin Savers INVERSSO was instructing patrons to leave the Key West Rapids ride in Adventure Island. The weather conditions had grown unpredictable, and employees were escorting people away from the attractions. Savers INVERSSO had been working over 700 feet above ground when lightning struck him. The young SeaWorld employee was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Unfortunately, he died soon after. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration cited the park for failing to follow procedures in the midst of a thunderstorm. Since these measures could have helped avoid Savers' death, it made SeaWorld liable for a lawsuit. Number 8. Eye injury. During the 2020 pandemic, a family visiting the Deep Sea World Park was shaken up by a hand sanitizer accident. An unnamed toddler had approached the dispenser with his mother, Katie, expecting it to squirt alcohol onto his hands. Instead, it ended up shooting into his eyes due to a malfunction, leaving him screaming in agony. The family's last name was not reported in order to protect the child's identity. Kate told the media that park employees demanded she pay the entry fee before the child could receive medical attention, and once inside, they didn't rush them to the infirmary. Due to the delays, the family called an ambulance and was rushed to the ER. Doctors informed the parents that the 3-year-old child might suffer permanent damage to his left eye. As of November 2020, it's not been reported whether the child would recover his sight. Number 7. Child endangerment. A 19-year-old woman whose name wasn't released to the public attempted to murder her 4-month-old child at the Busch Gardens park. She was arguing with her partner when she suddenly threw the baby over a fence and directly onto the park's monorail track. She would later claim her daughter accidentally slipped out of her hands, but the railing was 8 feet tall. This effectively made it impossible for the child to simply slip. Fortunately, one of the operators managed to spot the baby and shut off the monorail's power. The child was badly hurt, sporting several head injuries. She ultimately managed to make a full recovery, and the unnamed mother was taken to court. Though she had initially declared herself innocent, the woman eventually admitted that she had tried to kill the baby. The reason was as terrifying as the act itself. She wanted to prove to the baby's father that she could do whatever she wanted to her daughter. Number 6. Roller coaster malfunction. On October 15th, 2005 and May 12th, 2016, several passengers suffered hellish experiences on the same ride, the SeaWorld, located in Busch Gardens, Tampa. The first incident was less nerve-wracking than the second, with patrons being stranded on the holding brake for almost an hour. They were eventually brought down by the park's employees. and no one was injured in the process. During 2016, a second malfunction left 24 passengers hanging 200 feet over the ground. To put things into perspective, that's taller than the Arc de Triomphe. Due to delays in the rescue efforts, they were forced to remain stuck up in the air for close to 2 hours. Fortunately, no one was wounded in the process, and the ride was once again reopened 4 days later. Number 5. Baywatch Ski Show. During a Baywatch ski show at SeaWorld, Ohio, a mechanical issue caused the motorboat to crash into the audience. The water vehicle was 18 feet long, making it as long as a fully grown giraffe. 4,000 visitors witnessed how at least 22 people were smashed and sent flying into the air. Actors from the show immediately jumped onto the seats, helping to lift the boat and rescue the patrons buried underneath. The victims' ages ranged from 2 to 78 years, and 4 of them were rushed to the ER in critical condition. The rest suffered relatively minor injuries and received less urgent medical attention. No casualties were reported, and no further information was provided regarding any long-term damage sustained by the victims. Number 4. Big Bad Wolf. In early May of 1993, one of the cameras monitoring the Big Bad Wolf roller coaster at the SeaWorld-owned Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, required maintenance. An unnamed 63-year-old employee approached the area, attempting to uncover the lens. While concentrating on his work, he didn't realize the suspended cars were approaching. He was struck in the head, resulting in catastrophic injuries. He was immediately rushed to the hospital, and the ride remained closed for a full week before reopening. The man, whose name wasn't released to the public, died at the hospital soon after. This wasn't the only deadly incident involving the roller coaster. 20 years later, a constructor was painting the ride's exterior when the platform he was working on overturned. He was dead by the time first responders arrived at the location. Number 3. Amanda BOURASSA. Amanda BOURASSA was 21 years old when she suffered a terrible accident while working as a zookeeper at SeaWorld's Busch Gardens. She'd been given a private behind-the-scenes tour to her parents and boyfriend, allowing them to witness the training session of one of the park's lions. The objective of these sessions was to encourage the animal's good behavior during medical examinations. Up until that moment, the wild animal allowed his handlers to touch it without incidents and responded to its name. However, that day, it reacted viciously when BOURASSA attempted to slip her hand into its enclosure. The young woman's family was witness to the sudden attack. The lion bit the zookeeper's hand and pulled hard enough to sever her arm at the elbow. She was rushed to the hospital, where surgeons tried to reattach her limb. Their efforts unfortunately were fruitless. Today's topic was requested by Savannah Huaman. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Keith Clarke. Keith Clarke and his family were visiting Discovery Cove Water Park when he decided to explore one of the venue's pools. This spot was styled to look like the bottom of the sea, with real coral reefs. While swimming, he suffered from a relatively minor cut on his thumb. What might have been an easily treated injury to any other person presented a deadly threat to the hemophiliac, Clarke. Upon his arrival at the ER, doctors realized that the patient was suffering from septic shock and organ failure. He refused further treatment at the local hospital and was flown to his native Britain via air ambulance. Once there, in an attempt to save his life, surgeons amputated both his legs. They considered this was the only way to keep the infection from spreading further. Unfortunately, none of these measures worked, and Clarke died soon after with streptococcal septicemia ruled as the cause of death. Before we continue, official They Will Kill You merchandise is now available at theywillkillyou.com. Stop clowning around and check it out, because your purchases really help support the channel. Number 1. Death of Dawn Brancheau. Once again, TILIKUM the killer whale makes an appearance on our list. This time, the killing was so brutal that it changed the way sea-themed parks deal with aquatic animals during shows all across America. Dawn Brancheau was one of SeaWorld's most popular trainers. She'd been working with orcas for 15 years by the time of her death, and had also been part of the famous Shamu show. As she was rubbing TILIKUM's head close to the end of a show, witnesses watched in horror as the orca suddenly lunged at her violently. Brancheau was dragged underwater and promptly drowned. TILIKUM refused to let go of her corpse, even as other employees tried to offer him food and threw nets into the water. Bones in her jaw, ribs and vertebra were shattered, her spinal cord was severed, and her scalp was ripped off. Brancho also presented elbow and knee dislocations. For 45 minutes, TILIKUM kept her body underwater until he was finally guided towards a smaller pool. Due to this incident, trainers were forbidden from entering the water with any orcas. SeaWorld attempted to lift this prohibition, but the Occupational Safety and Health Administration intervened, making it a standard for the industry. Thanks for watching. Would you rather swim with an orca or coat yourself in honey and spend an entire life in the African tundra? Let us know in the comments section below.